Hi, this is Beth Willett. I wanted to tell you about discrete trial training in the regular education classroom for children with autism. So, been in lots of classrooms, lots of early intervention classrooms, and you typically always see the same thing. You see our kiddos with ASD, if they are severe, or not even severe, but just kind of mild, having to either struggle along to figure out what the teacher's talking about, or what the teacher wants, or to pay attention and listen, or they're just in the back of the room with a piece of paper and some colors, which is not optimal for their education, period. Okay, kids with autism need to have the opportunity to have a good instruction, evidence-based, that we know will help them to meet their potential. So, I decided to check in on how hard or if it would be feasible to use discrete trial training in the classroom. What I found was that autism hasn't really even been around in the United States for all that long. In fact, they call it relatively new. The IDEA from 1990 says that it definitely is a criteria, but it also says that we must use evidence-based teaching procedures in order to help these kiddos in the classroom. There's a saying out there that says, if you've seen one child with autism, you've seen one child with autism, which is so very true. Even though they share characteristics, many characteristics, they don't all share the same combination of characteristics, and they don't all share them to the same degree. Therefore, there are lots of different evidence-based instructional programs out there to help these guys. The one that I focused on was under ABA. ABA is Applied Behavior Analysis, and it breaks down learning into three basic steps. You have your antecedent, your behavior, and then your consequence. This is a good way to track behavior if it's an inappropriate behavior or something you want to extinguish for all kids. But especially for kiddos with autism, it's a great learning tool, and this is why. It gives them some control, and this is how. It has a very clear beginning. It has a very clear middle, the behavior. It has a very clear ending, or the consequence. So you set it up with the materials. You give a command, which is called an SD. It's a stimulus. The child performs the behavior. Whether they do it correctly or incorrectly, they are performing the behavior. And the consequence will be, do I prompt you? Do I use a gestural prompt or a verbal prompt? Do I do different levels of prompting? Do I reinforce you because you did it right? All those things. Do I need to use an error correction? So all of those things happen on the back end, but it's very clear to the child that they begin when I say they do the behavior that I requested, and then they see what happens on the end. You always want it to end in a positive, that way the child wants to do it again. Research shows that discrete trial training is an optimal way to teach new skills, then to help generalize those skills and to motivate student learning, and to even check for maintenance of that learned skill. There are different tiers of an intervention. Some say that discrete trial should be a third level intervention, which is the most intense. But research shows easily that it's kind of a second level. You can use it as a second level if you're teaching a new skill in an academic area. Say, instead of teaching starting with a child at compliance or identification of something, what if you have a kid that is a little higher functioning and you want to help them learn what a noun is? You wouldn't want it to be so intense, but you want it to be intense enough that they understand, that they can show you what a noun is, that they understand what the noun is. The procedure's the same. The time limit is probably not the same. It's probably what's less. It's what's less intense. You don't do it for as long. You still have to complete the procedure in exactly the same way. It's very scripted, so that you retain fidelity. And my paper shows that every teacher, I won't say every teacher, almost every teacher is going to experience a child with autism in their classroom. And the most important thing is that these teachers understand that they're there, that they learn differently, that they behave differently, and they understand differently, and that there are different implementations out there for them to use. They need to understand that when they do learn to use these programs and they do set them up in their classrooms to be used, they have to be done exactly step by step, so that you know that the data at the end is the same every single time. It's not, oh, he did good today because, we just left that part off, or we didn't worry about, we gave him some extra rewards. We gave him some extra time. We didn't do as many. You have to follow the procedure. Absolutely follow the procedure, or Monday's data has nothing to do with Tuesday's data. And if you don't evaluate the data, if you don't track it and evaluate it, there's no reason to do it. But you will not understand, is this child learning the skill? Has this child learned the skill? Can we move on to a new skill when we have it in maintenance and we bring it back to check it? Do they know what I taught them, or do they know the weird way we did it? So they just know something else. Has to be to fidelity. A lot of people argue, though, about ABA being too strict, being too harsh, being too robotic. But ABA can very easily be used with the natural environment teaching. You teach the new skill, and you move the skill out. You use the skill. Discrete trial does not have to happen at the table. Discrete trial can happen in the middle of the room. It can happen on the trampoline. It can happen on the swing set. It can happen at the picnic. It can happen at the grocery store. Where all those places are natural, as long as you use the same steps of, this is what I need you to do, this is what you're going to do, and this is what we're going to do at the end of that. For example, if I want to know if a child can match objects, 3D objects, I would start with three 3D objects, like a circle, a car, or and a hairbrush. Give him I would have a set of the exact identical things that I just set out, and I would hand him one, and I would say match. That would be the antecedent. That would be the SD, match. The child would take the object that he has, and he will layer it in an exact match. Then he would get his reinforcer. So there's your behavior, there's your consequence. Should the child not be able to match it, there are different levels of how I can help guide him to match it correctly, which is the only way they can learn. So, the thing you need to know when you start teaching kiddos with autism spectrum disorder is that everything about them is probably different. Therefore, you have to be different in the classroom. And there's so many ways to do this, and so many places to get the training. So, my recommendation would be that you try. You try to find one. There's 27 different evidence-based practices, instructional practices. YouTube, Google, amazing places to learn some of these ways to teach. All we have to do is put it out there, work hard, and see the reward for these kids with autism. Thank you.